Good evening, guys. Now I've got discussion C for you. We are discussing dementia care from a professional um, long term care nurse's point of view for her own father. So here we go with the presentation I made for you. When professional knowledge isn't enough, navigating my father's dementia care as a long term care nurse. I have spent years inside long term care facilities, walking families through the hardest days of their lives. I've explained care plans, mediated crises, and reassured adult children who felt guilty, frightened, or unprepared. I've coached them through the maze of dementia behaviors, the unpredictability of decline, and the emotional toll of watching a parent slip away piece by piece. I've been the steady voice in the room, the one who knows the regulations, the medications, and safety protocols, and the system. But none of that prepared me for the moment my own father needed the same level of care I had spent my career providing. Suddenly, the clinical knowledge I relied on every day felt thin compared to the emotional weight pressing on my chest. I wasn't the nurse in this story, I was the daughter, and the daughter in me was overwhelmed. The shock of the price tag. The first time I saw the monthly cost estimates, 7,700, I felt my stomach drop. I knew the numbers. In theory, I have told families gently that long term care is expensive, that dementia care requires staffing, specialized training, and consistent supervision. I've watched them absorb the news, their faces tightening as they tried to calculate how long their savings would last. But seeing that number applied to my father was different. It wasn't a theory, a theoretical figure. It was a monthly drain on our family's future. Reminder that dementia doesn't just steal memories, it steals financial stability too. Even with my professional background, navigating the system felt like trying to swim against a current. The paperwork, the assessments, the eligibility rules, the waiting lists, all all of it blurred together. I found myself second guessing decisions I would normally make with confidence. I felt guilty for not being able to do more, guilty for needing help, guilty for not being able to provide the level of care he needed at home. The emotional collision of roles. Being a nurse didn't shield me from the grief. If anything, it intensified it. I knew exactly what dementia would take from him. I knew the stages, the behaviors, the risks. I knew what progression really meant, and that knowledge sat heavy in my chest every time I visited him, every time he forgot my name, every time he looked at me with a softness that wasn't recognition, but something more instructional, a flicker of trust without memory. Professionally, I could compartmentalize, compartmentalize. Personally, I could not. This is a unique heartbreak in watching your parent decline while also understanding the clinical mechanisms behind it. It's like seeing the blueprint of the house you grew up while watching it crumble. The financial reality families face. Families often assume nurses have some secret shortcut through the system, a hidden door that makes care more affordable or easier to access. I wish that were true. The reality is that dementia care in America is largely privately funded, and the burden falls squarely on families. At 7,700 a month, even middle class families can find themselves drained within a year. Savings evaporates, retirement plans collapse. Adult children take a second jobs second jobs, move in together or delay their own medical care. The financial strain becomes part of the caregiving story, shaping decisions as much as love does. I felt the strain acutely. Every invoice felt like a countdown. Every month felt like a negotiation between what he needed and what we could sustain. The quiet, unspoken truth. The hardest part wasn't the paperwork on the cost. It was the realization that even with all my training, my experience, and all my knowledge, I could not stop the progression of his disease. I could not fix it. I could not save him. And that is the truth. So many caregivers carry silently. Dementia forces you to grieve in slow motion. You lose your parent long before you lose them physically. You lose them. You lose them in moments, in fragments, in conversations that trail off, in memories that disappear, in familiar routines that suddenly confuse them. Being a nurse didn't make that easier. It only made me more aware of what was coming. What I learned and what I want other families to know. There is one thing this journey has taught me. If there is this if there is one thing this journey has taught me, it is that professional expertise does not replace emotional support. Caregiving is not a clinical task. It is a human one. And even professional expertise does not replace emotional support. Caregiving is not a clinical task, it is a human one. And even those of us who work in the system need help navigating it. Here's what I want other families to know: you are not failing if you cannot provide 24/7 care at home. Dementia is bigger than any one person. You are not alone in feeling overwhelmed by the cost. The system is difficult and the financial burden is real. You deserve support, both practical and emotional. Your love matters, even when your parent cannot express recognition. Your grief is valid, even while your parent is still alive. A final reflection: caring for my father has reshaped the way I see my work. I still guide families through the system, but now I do it with a deeper understanding of the emotional terrain they are crossing. I know what it feels like to sit on both sides of the table. I know what it feels like to be the nurse and the daughter at the same time. And I know that even when the cost is overwhelming, even when the decisions are painful, even when the future feels uncertain, the act of caring, of showing up, of advocating for, or of advocating, of loving, it is is its own form of dignity. Okay, here's the second part of C, guys. When professional knowledge meets personal crisis, decision making under strain in my father's dementia care. As a long term care nurse, I have spent years guiding families through the labyrinth of dementia care. I've explained levels of care, broken down costs, and helped adult children make impossible choices with limited information and even more limited emotional bandwidth. I've been the calm voice in the storm, the one who knows the regulations, the staffing realities, the safety risks, and the long arc of dementia. But when my own father needed care, all that professional clarity fractured. I suddenly was suddenly I was not the nurse in the room. I was the daughter, and the daughter in me was overwhelmed, not just emotionally, but financially, practically, and externally. The 7,700 monthly cost wasn't a line item on someone else's care plan. It was a direct hit to my family's future. It was a number that forced decisions I wasn't ready to make. This part, this is the part of caregiving we rarely talk about, how even the experts struggle when the crisis becomes personal, and how decision making changes under strain, the collision of roles, why expertise doesn't shield you. Professionally, I know dementia. I know the behaviors, the risks, the progression. I know what total care really means. But none of that knowledge softened the emotional blow of watching my father decline. In fact, it shaped it. I understood exactly what was coming, and that made every decision heavier. When you're both the clinician and the child, you're consistently negotiating between two truths. You know what needs to be done. You don't want this to be happening. That tension makes decision making harder, not easier. The weight of the 7,700 monthly cost. Families often assume nurses have some secret shortcut through the system, a hidden door that makes care more affordable or easier to access. I wish that were true. The reality is that dementia care is. The reality is that dementia care in America is largely privately funded, and the burden falls squarely on families. At 7,700 a month, even middle income families can find themselves drained within a year. Savings evaporate, retirement plans collapse. Adult children take on second jobs or move in together. The financial strain becomes part of the caregiving story, shaping decisions as much as love does. I felt that strain acutely. Every invoice felt like a countdown. Every month felt like a negotiation between what he needed and what we could sustain. Decision making under strain, a framework I had to learn the hard way. When emotions run high and finances run thin, decision making becomes reactive. You're trying to solve today's crisis without losing tomorrow's stability. Here is the framework I eventually had to build for myself, one I now share with families who feel the same pressure. Separate the clinical decision from the emotional reaction. Ask, ask two distinct questions. What level of care does my parent clinically require? What am I feeling about what am I feeling about that reality? These are not the same question, and uh, blending them leads to guilt driven decisions that aren't sustainable. To identify the non negotiables, these are the safety and dignity factors that cannot be compromised. 24/7 supervision if wandering or sundowning is present. Medication management, fall prevention, behavioral support, consistent routines. Non negotiables anchor you when emotions pull you toward unrealistic options. Map financial timeline. Instead of asking, can we afford this? Ask for how long you can afford this. What changes when the savings run out? What benefits or programs become available at that point? A timeline turns to panic. A timeline turns panic into planning. Build a 2-track plan, now and later. Track A, immediate care needs. Track B, long term financial stability. Most families try to solve both tracks at once. Under strain, that is impossible. Break them apart. Use your professional knowledge, but don't let it silence your feelings. You can be the nurse and the daughter, but not at the same time. Switch roles intentionally. When reviewing care plans, nurse mode. When grieving, daughter mode. When making financial decisions, advocate mode. Role switching prevents emotional overload. Bring in a second decision maker. Even even experts need someone outside the emotional blast radius. A sibling, a spouse, trusted friend, or social worker can reality check your assumptions. Slow down, slow down slow down rushed decisions. Remind you of your limits. Help you see options you missed. Decision making under strain is never meant to be done alone. The emotional truth beneath the decisions. The hardest part wasn't the paperwork of the cost, it was the realization that even with all my training, all my experience, and all my knowledge, I could not stop the progression of his disease. I could not fix it. I could not save him. And that grief, the slow motion loss, sits underneath every decision you make. You're not you're not overwhelmed because you're unprepared. You're overwhelmed because you're human. What I carry forward now, caring for my father, reshaped the way I guide families. I still explain the system, but now I understand the emotional terrain they're crossing. I know what it feels like to sit on both sides of the table. I now I know what it feels like to be the nurse and the daughter at the same time. And I know that decision making under strain is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of love. Okay, guys, I will be on after dinner for a D show. Okay, so I am taking a dinner break. I will be back on after dinner for shows. Until then, Gator Wellness, take care, folks.